And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We are on podcast locations throughout the internet. We don't know where it began, nor do we know where it ends. All we know is we're somewhere in the middle of no beginning and no ending. Figure that one out and get back to me, will you? We are on podcasts at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, and all kinds of other locations. You are reposting, and thank you for doing that. It expands our reach. It shows people that we are out there. We are trying to, well, I've said it before. I will say it again. We're out to change the world. Yes, we are. And we thank you for being a part of that. So with that being said, we also are on YouTube. You know that. We're on YouTube. And it's a cool thing to be on YouTube. And we encourage you to go to our website, richarddugan.com, go to the missions page, and you can learn more about what we are doing. And we also have PayPal account and Patreon accounts for your security as well as ours. If you'd like to support us financially, we would be ever so grateful for all of that. So please do what you can. Thank you to those who have supported us. And we've had quite a few people. And thank you for those who will support us. We also want you to participate in a very important event. It's been going on for over a year. I've been promoting it since September of 2019. It's called, in this case, the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s. We encourage you to spend time going within. That's where you have perfect vision, regardless of what your vision is. Mine, when I was born, 2200 in the right eye, 2400 in the left. But I always had 20/20 vision going within, finding that still small place to find the answers that I need to make it through the day to day, the week to week, the month to month, to get inspiration, to get guidance, to get encouragement, and to also find that still, quiet, a peaceful place where I can listen to the still small voice and really find out what my life is all about, who I am. I know it's a little scary because we do have a dark side. We also have a light side, and it's important to get to know who we are. So please do that. It would be gratefully appreciated if you do. Today's program is topical. It's important. We need to find out more about this particular subject, especially considering the fact that we are in the age, I call it the COVID era, but we're also in the age of what I love, this phrase, we're in the age of truth decay. Truth decay. Well, today we're going to hopefully demystify some of these things, but also get some more information about what's really going on. We're going to talk with Abbey LeVine. She's the filmmaker, and she has COVIDPOV. And Abbey, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. We are socially distant. No, we're not wearing masks. I joke with people saying that one day we could catch something even through the internet, in spite of the fact that, yeah, there are viruses and there's software. But, you know, I'd rather have smell-o-vision before we could pass viruses through the internet. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about COVIDPOV. It's definitely a project that has been a long time in the making now, unfortunately, and it came about very suddenly, and it should be, hopefully will educate your listeners.
All right. So for those people, we're going to start the education early here. And I even asked the question, obviously, because I didn't know what it was. And you had made a comment about it, and we can talk about that as well if we want. But COVIDPOV, and some people are going, POV, what's POV? Because I know what PPE is and all of that stuff. I heard all these other acronyms. What's POV?
We chose the name COVIDPOV because we wanted to show different people's points of view. And what this project is it is a deep dive into the first 60 days that the virus hit and the first 60 days of quarantine. So, of course, when we started on March 13th, we didn't know that this would still be going on 9 months later.
Yeah, it's it is an extraordinary situation that we are in today, that probably most all of us have never been through before, unless you're over 100 years old. You went through the Spanish flu, but that was over 100 years ago, and you'd still be an infant or a toddler if you had been through that, unless you're 120 or 130. And who knows, there may be some out there. I remember when this whole thing started. What about you? First of all, what was your first impression of what started to happen, say, as the news started to come out in maybe late, actually, I think it was in November of 2019, we started to hear little snippets regarding China and this particular virus.
Well, to be honest with you, I actually didn't pay any attention to it at first, Richard. I live in New York City. I have an infant, and I have been mainly focused on our world. And I'm not a huge political fan or advocate. I don't like a ton of news, and I think there's so many things going on in our world all the time, and it's important to focus inward on what you can control.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of how I live my life. So what happened in New York City was that people started realizing that this was actually going to be an issue. And I was ready to go back to work after being on maternity leave for 6 months. So I was actually scheduled to go to Atlanta on April 1st to film a TV show. And so I was deep in the thick of that, and not at all ready for a quarantine. And in fact, on March 6th, the weekend of March 6th, I went up to see a friend who has a beach house, and she and her husband are both in the healthcare industry. And they said, you're not going to Atlanta. Well, none of us are going anywhere. And I sort of scoffed at them, but he works in insurance and she works in a hospital, and they knew exactly what was coming our way.
Wow. Well, it was what was interesting to me, and actually, again, not that I say this every time I do these, have these conversations with people on the program, not that I was wanting anybody to be injured or catch this thing or die from it. But in March, when they did make the decision to start shutting the country down, as the phrase goes, I was elated. And the reason I was elated was because I'm 60, okay? And throughout my entire life, as the influenza would circle the globe every year, we would do nothing. Of course, then the vaccines came along, and that was something, but it still was nothing. And I used to advocate back when I was in my teens and early 20s, why don't they just shut the airlines and travel down for 2 weeks? 2 weeks. Oh, no. Too devastating to the economy. The economy. It's like, my God, what is this monolith that we can't seem to get over, under, around, or through that keeps us from taking care of people in this country? I use the phrase from the Declaration of Independence, that the phrase, to promote the general welfare and to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, your infant child. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going, what do you mean you have the constitutional right to do whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, however you want, regardless of what that does to the general welfare or to our posterity? So you're saying you are more important than the collective, than the community, than your family. I was going to visit my parents on my parents' anniversary and then on my dad's birthday back in August. And they said, please don't. And it's like, I don't want to be responsible for contaminating them. And they're in their 80s, late 80s. So I was elated overall back in March because we were going to do something different. Einstein's definition of insanity. And I knew that because we were doing something different, we may not like what it's going to look like coming out the other side, but at least it was going to be different. And then the opportunities. And in your case, the opportunity to make this film. What were some of the key things that you learned in the creation of this project? What didn't you know going in? And what was your point of view coming out the other side?
Well, I didn't know that I could decide to make a film on March 13th and then be in production on March 14th. So this film came together very, really just kind of by the grace of whoever controls these creative decisions out up there in the world. I said, you know what, if we're going to be in quarantine, I'm not going to be able to stop my creative brain from going. And, I'm in a fairly small apartment in New York. So I've got to stay busy. And so I posted the idea of who wants to help me make this film while we're in quarantine into a Facebook group made up of all women who work professionally in television and film. And originally we had about 50 people helping us out. We got down to a group of 22, which was still a lot of people to manage for a period of time. And then, we kind of kept getting a little bit smaller. But we got submissions from 71 people for 60 days over the course of March, April, and May, and some of them went into June. Look, I think that we thought we would all be released from quarantine at the end of 60 days. We could have kept recording, but first we were going to do 30 days, and then we were going to do 60 days, and we just decided, we thought, wow, we really have a lot of footage already, actually. And so we decided to stop. Also, it's a big project to have done no pre-production and development on, and just go into production. And also, it's not like any of us had ever filmed remotely before, or been, a lot of us have dealt with acquired footage before, but we hadn't dealt with directing people remotely, and then just the sheer amount of video that we have that came in that had to be organized and then, tell a story. And just so everybody knows too, we're still in editing on this project. So it hasn't been released yet. We're still hemming and hawing away at the creative, but yeah.
Well, I remember my first major audio production. We recorded, I don't know how many hours of audio. And this is going back to when we were using reel to reel. Okay.
Right.
And so we went through, and I'm splicing and the China marker, marking and cutting and splicing and all of this kind of stuff, like you used to do with the 35 millimeter with film. You used to do 70 millimeter, whatever the format was. And believe it or not, I still kind of miss that. I really do. I miss that because it's tangible, it's hands-on. It was great fun. Anyway, so you're still in the process. And of course you live by the adage that it is better to have more and have to eliminate than not to have enough and have to figure out how to lengthen it. Although a documentary such as yours, COVIDPOV, is there a time limit? This is sort of the structural protocol aspect of it. Is there a particular time frame that you're trying to put it into?
We are in the process of figuring that out also. There's some talk of us making it about an hour and a half long, or we may put some of the stories together and release them in pods. We started to put the footage together, and we got some of the beefier stories to like about 10-15 minutes, and some of the smaller stories are even shorter than that. But there's a matter of, are we going to intercut them? This is the filmmaking process, right? It depends. It's all anybody's game, right? It's anybody's decision how we actually tell the stories. So we have a lot of, there's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of serious moments that people are going through. We have a woman who's pregnant. And as part of it, we have people that are essential workers on the front lines that are in it. We have people that are having pretty serious mental issues, being at home and having some PTSD. We tried to find some humor. We do have some humor. We have a really pretty funny family from Staten Island who is telling their story, but the purpose of this was to we think that it's going to be hard to explain this to our children and future generations. And so we feel like we really captured a historic document. of what we all experienced from our POV, our
Mm-hmm.
perspective, our points of view in our home when we suddenly the world stopped,
Yeah.
right? So that was the purpose of getting the footage so that we could be able to look back on it. And we're thinking maybe we'll release this at the 1 year anniversary, maybe the 2 year, maybe the 5 year. We're not really sure. We're sitting on it to see when the most appropriate time is at the moment and figuring out how to do the creative.
So what would be the anniversary date? Is it March 6th? Or, I mean, that's the other thing too, because one of the first cases in the United States, I believe, was back in January of
Right,
2020.
right.
But we didn't lock down the country until early mid-March. And of course, there you go. Now, one of the, and speaking of humor, I tried to put sort of a humorous spin on this myself by looking at, and again, ladies and gentlemen, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody who has had it, has caught it, has been sickened, has been permanently affected, because that's one of the problems with this virus. Even if you survive it, if you were adversely affected, a lot of your organs are going to be impacted for we don't know how long. And then no disrespect to anybody who has died from it. My God, we are fast approaching, I can't believe this, 300,000 people. They say we're going to get there probably before March. And I can't, and again, we're not talking numbers here. This is one thing I try to remind people. This is not a number we're talking about. These are human beings, family and friends and relatives and acquaintances, even if it's just within business, that are gone. 300,000 human beings just in this country alone. But I tried to put a somewhat humorous spin on it by saying, how do we know that this virus isn't some extraterrestrial? I mean, we assume that all extraterrestrials are bipedal in our size, but some of them could be huge giants or microbes. We don't know. And how do we know that this virus isn't sentient? And of course, the joke part is, where's the prime directive when you need it? But with that being said, we went to war, and I was really surprised that it's like, what is wrong with us? Why is it that we always have to have an enemy? We never referred to the flu virus, the influenza. We never went to war against it. We never went to war against polio or tuberculosis or any of the others that we have treatments for. Your thoughts on using a military term, if you will, a combative term, even though, yes, people do battle this and some people succumb and so forth, and others have those underlying conditions. But your thoughts about, and again, I'm with you. I don't want to politicize this, but many people in and out of politics use that terminology. Your thoughts?
Well,
or is it a moot point?
What it brings up for me in that question is, how is the news reporting on COVID? And, I've been inside a lot of newsrooms. I've launched a lot of big talk shows, 2 big talk shows that are still on the air 20 years ago. I've been inside the halls of all of the celebrity talk shows. And, the truth is that, the bloodier, the gorier, the more exaggerated, the better. That just is the truth.
If it bleeds, it leads.
It is true. And what I noticed, what I can speak specifically to, is that I noticed as soon as we during the election, that so much of the COVID talk went away. And literally the second that Biden was essentially named our president, the nightly news went back to the blood and gore of COVID. And that's when I really said, I do think it's bad. I am taking it seriously. I'm wearing a mask everywhere and sanitizing and
Me too.
Quarantining, but I don't think it needs to be considered. I don't know. It's a tricky question. I mean, is it a war? Yeah, it is a war, but there's a lot of things we're all dealing with all the time. And I'd like to see more airtime given to essential workers and family people that have lost loved ones, and I'd like to see more effort put on solutions rather than always highlighting the problems.
Yeah. Are they still applauding and celebrating these first responders? I think it was like at 7 p.m. every afternoon or evening. They stopped doing that.
No, yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. In fact, I knew that Biden had been announced as the winner because that Saturday around 12:15, the same noise erupted out of my apartment window. It was the same, and I said, "Oh my gosh, you know, the New Yorkers are still doing that, the banging of the pots and screaming and stuff." But no, I mean, no.
Yeah. Let me ask you, how many people have you to this point? Because you say you're still editing, so I take it you're no longer gathering footage. But how many people did you talk to across this country, or was it a global project? And how many countries?
We have 71 contributors from all over the country, and I believe we counted 7 countries. So we had Spain, Italy, Morocco. Somebody from China submitted. Where else did we have? Oh, Guatemala. Yeah, and Venezuela, and Czech Republic. Yeah. So we.
Go ahead. Well, okay. So the perspective coming from each one of these people, the 71, you have 71 different perspectives. Were many of them similar, or were they all pretty much in one direction? What was the divergence of perspectives?
There are some themes that emerge, especially with parents having kids at home. But what we find so fascinating, and we being it's all female filmmakers too. I should have mentioned that up top. It's all.
Oh, that's congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. I know it is a big deal. There's like a story behind the story.
Oh yeah.
Well, because we all didn't even know each other, and we came together to make this film. So we met every day in quarantine, which was fantastic. But we would follow the stories. I mean, no, they're all very different. Some of them there's some singles, there's many families, there's all different genders and also wealth levels. We really tried to capture what we felt would be the most diverse group of people that others could see and relate to. So actually there's nobody that's extremely wealthy. It's mainly middle class and below. We have a couple of farmers. We have somebody from a Native American man from an Indian reservation that was closed down. Nobody could get in or out of the reservation. And yeah, I mean, we have a young intern, a resident doctor up in Boston who we followed through the course of the beginning of the pandemic when he felt like he was a little bit cocky. And it was funny because some people said, "Oh, he's not a good character." And I said, no, this guy is going to have a good story arc, because you could almost see where that story was going. Because once the realities of COVID hit, you know, things got real for him, and he did in fact actually get COVID, and he's considering whether or not he even wants to stay in the medical field now. So we have stories like that. We have a blueberry farmer from Seattle, Washington, whose small business is affected and her neighbors are affected, and they sort of feel like they're preparing, but they are not sure it's going to hit them too hard, you know, and so you don't know whether or not it's going to get to them. And we have a waiter, an African-American waiter who completely runs out of money. And he has to depend on his friends for food, actually. And, you know, he's very philosophical and very deep, and he has a healing relationship with his mother through this, because he realizes that it could easily be the end for anyone at any point. Well, so it's really all over the place.
Where can people go to either to see anything of the film at this particular point? Again, I know you're still editing, so I'm sure there's probably not a lot. But tell us how people can find out more about this film, the documentary, and the work you're doing, and if you're still accepting any contributions of testimonials, so to speak, of their experiences, perspectives, I guess I should say, points of view.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Yeah, we did start a social media pages. So we have an Instagram account and a Facebook account, and they're both COVIDPOV. So COVIDPOV. The best piece of video that we released so far is our trailer, which you may have seen already. And it is about 4.5 minutes long. And so that's where people can see it. And I think we have that posted on our Facebook, actually at the top. But yeah, that's already gotten over 1,000 views actually. And I should just say at this point, we are looking for if help finishing the film financially and distribution. And I have a production company. It's called Swirl Studios, Swirl, SWIRL -studios.com. The sizzle reel's on there. Yeah, the sizzle reel's on there. So the trailer is on there. But if people wanted to contribute their story, we're not officially taking any more. We're not in production at the moment. We're in post-production, but I think, maybe given, who knows? We keep saying we need to fire this back up again and do like 6 months later.
Yeah. As of our conversation, ladies and gentlemen, and I actually have gone to a link. Apparently, there is a website. It is COVIDPOV.com. Now, I don't know if you're related to that. It seems like it looks similar. Interesting points of view on COVID and its potential impact on all of us. The future is good. Now, that's what the website says. Is this that's anything?
Not us. COVIDPOV.com? No, that's not us. I can't.
All right. Well, I am looking at the World Health Organization, and as of our conversation here with Abbey, Abbey LeVine. Is it Abbey LeVine?
LeVine. Yep.
Got it right the first time.
Thank you.
62,662,181. That is global confirmed cases. 62 million, and of those, we have 1,460,223 deaths.
Yeah.
And that is as we speak now. And apparently the Americas taken the lead, and this is under the category by regions of 26,663,000. Europe has 18,660,000. Southeast Asia, 10 million. And so forth. And the smallest that's listed here is the Western Pacific with only 886,000. And obviously the smaller areas are going to have smaller populations, ergo, hopefully smaller. But it's interesting to take a look at the map that they've provided as well. This opens the question to the level of information, facts that are contained within the context of COVIDPOV, the documentary that you're putting together. Is that its intent, to provide facts and or information about, or is this strictly a, I'm going to say subjective, because each point of view is a subjective perspective. But what it does, it's like what we try to do on this program, Abbey. We have this event. In this case, it's the coronavirus, COVID-19. It's in the middle of the circle. And what we want to do is we want to walk around the points of the circle to get as many different perspectives as we possibly can, so that we can better understand what's happening, what people are going through, what's happening in terms of the numbers, as the World Health Organization has listed on their website and so forth. So can you describe for us that aspect of the content, what people are going to take away from this documentary?
It is strictly non-factual. We actually say it's not about the virus at all. It's about the circumstances surrounding the virus. Okay. So it's what happens when people are in their own home, and it's the stories of those people.
Mm-hmm. Strictly. Okay. And it's important. That's one of the things that's been brought out in the last few interviews that I've done, is this aspect of understanding. Is that your point with this documentary, is to help the general public to understand what other people are going through? And if I may quote the line that's, I guess it's sort of become a cliche now, to let people know they aren't alone. I mean, really, they are not alone.
Well, those are two different things. First of all,
Okay.
I do think people are alone, and I think people are really, really suffering a lot from the isolation. And I personally, I'm an optimist, but I think it's hard to tell people you're not alone, because you are alone. And this is wonderful, face to face on a computer, but I think that we're going to have a huge mental health crisis on our hands after this, and we do now. I mean, there's just so many people that are so badly off during this that we're not even talking about. And yes, I mean, the way that you framed it, Richard, is exactly, we never actually have said it that way, but that absolutely is my personal mission. I have a nonprofit called Spread the Sparkle, and we do events on holidays for women and kids that have survived domestic violence. It's 5 years in the running, and we put on these beautiful events and for them, and Santa Claus comes and we do beauty gifts for the women, and it's really nice. And this year we're shifting to some of the doing Christmas. We're in the process of raising $5,000 for 10 families to give them each $500 gift certificate, probably to Target, so that they can get food and toys and supplies for Christmas. Because I mean, what I think is happening right now is that everyone is suffering and no one is available for support. The systems have started to fall out of place. The people that are normally strong are also suffering, and they're also going a little crazy going inside. And there's just a huge breakdown of emotional support systems happening. And I do think that we often forget about each other. And so I thought that the reason that I wanted to do this film was so that nobody got forgotten, and that there is an understanding of what all different types of people are going through. We're very careful about inclusivity in our casting when it comes to gender, race, like I said, wealth structure, and even where people live. We felt like it was really important to have a diverse group. And that speaks to having a lot of women running this also. That was not actually something that I particularly thought about. I can't take credit for that. We had a couple of other producers who really insisted on us getting, we wanted to make sure that we were all inclusive doing so. So, it really has taken a village to get this project filmed. And we hope that people realize, I think we all think we're struggling and suffering. I know I do. I'm a single mom by choice, and having a child at home by myself suddenly for 9 months has been beautiful, but also really hard, and I have it really good compared to a lot of people. And, my heart really hurts for so many people that are just, I can't imagine how some people are feeding their children right now. I don't understand.
Yeah, and certainly, I'm, I guess, very fortunate in that respect that I have been able to continue to work. My wife has been able to continue to work, although she was early on. She was furloughed for 8 weeks. We did have unemployment, and at that time, they were kicking in that extra $600 a week. And I know too that we don't know what's going to happen in the next few months. They say end of 2021, actually could go into 2022, as far as maybe wearing masks, still doing the social distancing. Speaking of social distancing, I've heard it said that's the wrong word in that distancing, not social distancing, physical distancing. Don't social distance, but physically distance yourself, because that's where the difference is going to be made as far as as far as this virus is concerned. But don't socially distance. Stay as connected as you can, keeping physical distance, with family and friends. I don't necessarily agree with people who jumped on airplanes at Thanksgiving and Christmas to go visit family and friends. I've heard it said, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and again, this is kind of getting into the facts a little. If we had done what we were asked to do in the first 3 to 4 months that this pandemic was declared, we'd be done by now. It would be over for the United States. But we didn't do that. And whether you want to blame the government or institutions, the health organizations, whoever you, or I say it's on the people, because that's where the action has to take place. You and I, Abby, you just said earlier, you do 2 out of the 3. You wear the mask, you sanitize your hands regularly, but you're still out and about amongst the people, but you're wearing your mask and you're keeping that distance between you and other people.
Criticism for that, actually.
Yeah? Which criticism for what? For what?
I mean, it's subtle, but being out and about, that's a rabbit hole we could go down, but we won't.
Sure. Well, and I'm out and about myself, but I'm not doing it because I want to be around people. I have to go get, my wife and I will go to the grocery store. We need to shop. We need to get food. Got to put gas in the truck to get to and from work and that kind of thing. I'm fortunate that 99% of the time I am by myself at the workplace. So, I have a fairly safe, my wife is in the medical field. She's not by herself, but she has to wear a mask during the entire shift. And she does. So there are things we've been asked to do. And if we had just done them in the first 3 to 4 months, like China, we'd be done. It'd be pretty much over. We'd be getting back to normal already. But people,
that comes down to one 5-letter word.
And that is? And what's the 5-letter word?
Trump.
I think I know it. What's that?
Trump.
Well, that may be true. But I also would give you another 5-letter word. It comes down to, and again, I am understanding is not only what you said, but what others have said as well. But the other 5-letter word is money.
Yeah.
It comes down to money. Everybody's talking about the economy. Well, if we had shut down the airports on both coasts, we only did it on the West Coast initially until they realized, oh, they're coming in from Europe too. Anybody with half a brain would have thought, we should have shut down both coasts, shut them down, and done it for 2 weeks, like I was mentioning earlier. Like I said, it's possible. Again, 2020 being hindsight, as well as the thing we're promoting, we might be through this by now. But again, who's to say? We just don't know. When you talked with each one of these people, were there specific questions that you asked, or did you just open it up and share with us your thoughts and feelings, your perspective? How did you promote this and encourage people to contribute?
We did ask questions. We never were present. What's so great about this project is that actually it's very intimate and very personal because they filmed themselves. So we would send them, each of our senior producers was assigned to anywhere from, 2 to 10 contributors, and they developed relationships with them and continued to watch their video as they came in. And so we would ask them to, if they were doing certain things, if they could record it, we would ask them to do certain questions, for us. And that's the fun of producing a story and then following it. And because obviously they're not going to film themselves for 24 hours a day, but some of them did film specific, a lot of material for us about what was going on in their lives, and how they film it is even part of their POV. That's also interesting.
It reminds me, what just came up in my mind was that this is similar to what would be considered the very first reality show.
Yeah.
And MTV pulled it off, and it was called A Real World. And I remember watching it.
Yeah.
I especially, now I don't know why, I just liked the guy who had the long hair. I can't remember his name. He was the guy with the long hair. Anyway.
Well, I work in reality TV, so I am a network television showrunner. So I have I've been around for a long time. So actually, I think I would say the first reality show was Survivor.
Survivor. Maybe you may be right about that.
I would say Survivor, and then Road. What was it? Road Rules? No. What was one that you just said? The MTV one?
Real World.
Real World, right. Yeah. And Big Brother. But yeah. I remember thinking when Survivor came out, how are they ever going to keep the show going? Like, even when I launched a Dr. Phil show, I launched that show, I thought, how many people can he give instruction to? Well, here we are 20 years later and it's still on the air. Yeah.
I've joked with people saying that, because I don't watch reality television in that regard, because I'm not a real fan of the competitive nature that they inject into the processes. I got enough injected into my real life.
Agreed.
But I've also jokingly said with people, I said, look, if they turned my life into a reality show, I wouldn't watch it. Now, that's not to say my life isn't interesting. It is to me, but not enough to sit down and watch me live my life.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of where I am at. But I have talked with people about the actual value of reality shows. And I was talking with a gentleman a couple of years ago about Survivor. And he says, because I was rather critical back then, a little less so now. And he says, well, yeah, I get the negative critique of Survivor as well as reality shows. But you have to consider, he says, what that has done to the level of confidence and curiosity of the people watching to go out and do stuff that they might not have considered doing.
Right. Yeah, I sort of begrudgingly say I worked in reality. It's an interesting field, I mean, it's not my proudest career move. I've done so many other kinds of shows too, crime shows and talk shows and cooking shows and so much more interesting programming. I personally don't watch reality, but it's been a very interesting genre to create.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
documentary is much more interesting, much more.
And in one sense, that's kind of what YouTube and Facebook have sort of turned into in terms of people posting these little snippets of their lives, whether it's sort of a journaling, where each day or week they'll post a video, hey, this week I did this, that, and the other thing. Or in many cases, it's sort of helped people to jump into a career they never thought they had. I mean, I was told years ago I needed to get into video. And as I shared with you, I resisted it because of the time it takes just to set up. I mean, the background that you see behind me, only part of that is a virtual. Those rocks, that's virtual. The other part, the black, that's actually soundproofing on the wall behind me. Of course, I got to get now myself centered as best I can I'm doing my own cinematography. Wore this nice, I don't even know what the color is of this shirt. Anyway, and I mean, there's so much preparation, whereas you jump behind a mic, you flip the switch and you're off and running, start recording and away you go. And that's the way I used to do these programs. Even when I had people in studio, I was never videoing these programs. I'm glad I'm doing it now because it's very interesting to watch myself, not from an egotistical standpoint and not really from a critical standpoint, but from as much of an objective perspective as I can to see how I can make it better. Maybe I should have, if I'm going to do video, maybe I should have trimmed my beard a little bit more, As I shared with you, I'm wearing my hat to reduce the shine off my head because of the lighting in here. I don't have, it's fluorescent. So, and then plus the fact that that's sort of my, I suppose you might say my brand, if you will, my style.
There you go. Anyway,
so it's one of those things where, okay, this pandemic has opened up, as I mentioned earlier, opportunities that none of us even knew existed, but many of us, such as yourself, are taking advantage of. Aside from this documentary, What has this opened up for you in that regard? Are there things now that you are doing that you, aside from not realizing, I can still do a documentary even though I'm locked down? But are there other things that have come up that weren't there prior to the lockdown?
I'm really appreciating the small moments of connection with my daughter, with having to adapt to a new lifestyle in a way that I never thought I would be able to do or could do. That's been a mental challenge that I'm finding sort of interesting. I can't imagine people that don't like food, what they're doing, because I love to cook. And so I've been cooking. So I'm at the point now where I'm a little cooked out. I never thought I'd get there in my entire life, but I make 3 full meals every single day for the 2 of us, and I've really enjoyed it. And so that's kind of been nice. And it's the simple things. It's really the simple things. That's what it's ended up coming down to. I think we're all going to have much greater appreciation for going to concerts and movies and just seeing friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I realize that this is somewhat of a small example on one level. But back at the turn of the 18th to the 19th to the 20th centuries, we went from the horse and buggy to the automobile.
Right.
All right. That changed everything. I don't know this because I haven't studied the history of it. I would venture there was a little bit of resistance by the horse and buggy manufacturers for a short time.
Right.
But eventually they acquiesced, and we still have them. They're not prolific like they used to be, but they're still around. I'm sure in Central Park, they still have horse and buggies that take people on rides through the park, that kind of thing. That's just one example. And I'm sure other cities do it as well. One of the things that I found so fascinating watching other documentaries of people in other countries, there was a gentleman who was a farmer in this one documentary we were watching, and he was driving this car, and I want to say he was in Russia, one of the Russian countries, and he was being filmed and talking about his life. And yes, they had electricity and running water, but they didn't live in the urban sector. It was very rural, and they were very happy.
Yeah.
They didn't have the modern conveniences that you and I have, and they were very happy.
I don't think we appreciate what we have, and just
I think
that we have running water and I mean just the very simple things of what we all have every day has gotten really, really lost. Especially where I live, I see people just, I don't, personally, I've lived in LA and in New York for the last 25 years, and I'm ready to go a little bit out of the urban, everything, just because I do think that there needs to be a lot more gratitude for the simpler things in life. Yeah. I mean, creating and there's definitely a big importance to, I do think there is a cultural impact to beauty and fashion and art and fine dining. It does have an important place in our world, but I think a lot of times we've gotten a little bit spoiled.
Yeah. Well, here's an observation of mine, and as a documentarian, I'm sure you've observed this, at least if you have not done a documentary regarding people in this area. But many other cultures around the world who are considered third world, many countries in Africa, the various tribes and the communities, the villages and the towns. When you go in there, they are in a similar situation to this one gentleman I was just talking about. And yet, if you have observed, you've been aware of the clothing that they are wearing, as well as the demeanor on their faces. Vibrant, unlike this shirt I'm wearing, it comes up very vibrant on the video, right? They are wearing incredibly colorful clothing, and they seem to be very happy people. And yet they don't have the modern conveniences of the 21st century, and it doesn't seem to bother them in the least. And yet we keep wanting to bring to them all of the modern conveniences. And yes, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but do they want it? It's a kind of going back to the question of where's the prime directive when you need it. If they want it, if they've asked for it, let's help them out. But if they didn't ask, why are we forcing this upon them? They're
Right.
perfectly fine the way they are. I'm
Right.
curious about the I'm curious about the uh, 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 demeanor of the people that you have associated with over the years in the documentaries that you've done. Have you observed that around the world traveling in terms of people who are in less than first, shall I say, or industrial or developed areas?
Well, I think the most interesting place I've been to document was 22 episodes of the A&E hit show Beyond Scared Straight. And so I've been inside 22 maximum security prisons. There was 5 seasons, I believe, but I did the first 2. And I found that a lot of the inmates, for the most part, the ones that we were dealing with who already had been reformed on some level and were leading these kids through programs to teach them how to stay out of jail, they were very comfortable in the structure of what the lifestyle was that they had there, knowing that they would have shelter, they would have food, that they would have some sense of community around them. There's obviously huge jail and prison, drama and issues within it. But to answer that particular question, yes, they adapted in a less than situation for them.
Yeah. Abbey, LeVine, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing this story of COVID POV. And it is COVID-19 POV, actually, the documentary. Points of View is what the POV stands for. We encourage people to go to Facebook and you said Instagram and put that in there, and they will find information and the trailer and so forth. We will be linked to one of those locations so that people can get more information, and do look forward to the release. Whether you do it on the anniversary thereof, once you figure out what that anniversary date is, or you just release it and say, hey, here it is.
Yeah.
Please watch it and ponder it and so forth. I think it's extremely important that we do that. Now, before I release you to go back into quarantine, I do have 3 final questions for you that I ask all of my guests, and you may have sort of addressed them throughout the program, but I like to ask them pointedly. Before I do, I want to remind our listeners we're here at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday mornings, Sundays, and then Monday mornings at 1 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We're on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, and many other locations with the podcast so that you can also share those. I thank the fact that you folks are reposting. If you'd like to support the work we're doing, we have a PayPal account for your security as well as ours. Any amount is gratefully appreciated. And please participate in the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s. We've got 9 years to go, but we hope you'll continue beyond that. Spend that time going within and recentering, because that's what's going to help you to get through the trying times, because COVID isn't going to be here forever. This is the era of COVID, okay? Eras do not last forever. And it may seem like a long time, but once we're on the other side, it's going, boy, that went by like a flash. And it really does. Before I let you go, let me ask you, of the 3, number 1 is, who is Abbey LeVine?
That's the question?
That is the first of 3.
Oh my goodness. How much time do you have?
How much time do you have?
Well, actually, I'm going to give you the answer that's on my personal Instagram, which is short and sweet. So I am a warrior. I'm a hustler. I'm a mama. I'm a producer. I'm a sparkle spreader. And there's a couple other R things. I'm a lover and I'm a dancer. That's what's on my Instagram. And I also curate what if anyone out there at all is thinking about having a child over 45, I am a huge advocate of egg and embryo donation. And if you have no idea what that means, my Instagram, Mama by Design, MOMMA by Design, will tell you my story. And
All right.
that's always something I'm proud to promote.
Very good. All right. Second question. What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you're doing now?
Legacy is actually very important to me. And I have always wanted to leave behind good in the world. I want to take people higher. I believe in cheerleading other people and in helping them find their superpower, and in telling their story. It's interesting, actually, the title of your program, because what I have always told people as my one-liner as a producer is that I believe everybody has a story to tell, no matter who you are. And in fact, I actually had an events company called Every Party Tells a Story at one point in my lifetime. But I believe in giving as a form of love. I believe in hope, as a form of just a daily energy. My daughter and I do affirmations in the morning in bed. She's 14 months and I'm teaching her now how to do them, and she's learning. And I believe that we should all understand each other, even if you don't agree.
Absolutely. There is a big difference between agreeing and understanding. And understanding is where we want to come from. And that's what this program's all about as well. Final question. What is your life's purpose?
Dude, these are heavy questions at the end. Jeez Louise. My life's purpose. I'm a sparkle spreader.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you again, Abbey LeVine, for joining us. COVID-19 POV is the name of the documentary, and you can go to Facebook, pop that in there, or Instagram as well. Or again, that was Mama by Design to find out more. If you're interested in, if you're over 40, I'm over 60, so I can't, forget it. But we thank you so much for sharing with us. And I would love to have you back again to talk more about the sparkle part of your life, even though that's going to come through the documentary COVID-19 POV. Because one of the areas that we do talk about is the more esoteric, more spiritual and metaphysical aspects of people's lives as they do the work and fulfill the life's purpose that they have come here to do. And we'd love to talk to you more about that if you're open to that.
Yeah, I'm open to that, Richard. Thank you. That's
great.
Sweet ask. Thank you. I appreciate your time and where you're coming from too.
Well, thank you so much. And I thank you for listening and watching Tell Me Your Story, both the radio broadcast, a podcast on the internet, as well as a video cast on YouTube. And we appreciate the fact that you are supporting us. Sometimes it's just by watching. Thank you, because we hope that you understand where we're coming from. We hope that you can understand where our guests are coming from. Don't have to agree. I don't agree with my guests all the time. And there are times when they will challenge my perspectives, and then my little huts of straw go burning to the ground. I'm willing to burn them all to the ground to learn something new. That's what it's all about. I'd rather begin in doubt and end in certainty than vice versa. Until our next broadcast, podcast, love to love.